Okay, the time is now 6:33. Welcome to the December 17th, 2020 Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting. Mr. Chairman, we do now have a quorum.
Awesome. Thank you, Thomas. Gentlemen, for those of you who are watching today, anybody, glad to have you here for the regular meeting of the Parks and Rec Board on this Thursday, December 17th. The meeting is beginning, and we'll have roll call. Phil Cranmer.
Present.
Jason Alberici.
Here.
And Sean Michael Janssen.
Present.
Awesome. Great. Next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If y'all rise. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. Next item today is to approve today's meeting agenda, as Tom has so graciously prepared for us. I will entertain a motion to...
Make a motion to approve today's meeting agenda.
Motion by Phil.
I'll second.
Second by Jason. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. Next item is the approval of the minutes from November 19th. I had a chance to take a look at them. Rather busy and efficient meeting. If you're all in favor, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from November 19th.
Motion by Jason. Do I have a second?
A second.
John Michael for a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. Next item is public comment. Tom, do we have any public comment for today's meeting?
No, Mr. Chairman, at this time, there's no public comment over Zoom or here in the meeting.
So be it. Next item 6 on the meeting is committee reports. Start at the bottom because I don't have anything to report for arts programming. You got something to tell me, Tom, for arts?
No, we have dance programming occurring now, and it's going steady. Numbers are not down, they're not up. She's just smooth sailing. She's offering a couple of new one-day camps over the break, and we actually have had a few registrations, so they might make, which is good.
Good. Awesome to hear. Tennis.
Yeah, that's tennis. They're in their winter season right now. Teams are full, courts are full. He can't really take any more teams, and he's doing lessons as well.
Yep. Awesome to hear. Did you take care of the one citizen we heard from last month?
Yes.
Awesome. Good. Thank you for that. Swim team, of course, probably not a lot to report on the swim team at the moment.
No report.
How about that? Basketball. I saw some great news in last month's minutes, Phil.
Yeah, I'll defer to Tom if you have an update. I haven't spoken with Kim.
Yeah, basketball, we're going to touch a little bit on it later as well. There are over 500 kids in the program. There have been some issues with COVID, not running rampant, but we have had some team quarantines and, cancellations of games, things like that. But overall, it's running smooth. All the gyms that we're using, the liaisons at the schools and the private complexes have been absolutely wonderful to work with so far. And we haven't had any issues there. And that's about all I have to report right now.
Awesome. Glad to hear that. Football.
Nothing really to report. They've
Sorry about that. That's my
interesting ringtone.
Yeah, that's nice, huh? Bear with me while that goes away. What on earth? Okay, sorry.
All right. So they wrapped up their season and just started sending out surveys and stuff, and they've been getting some back. I think they've been getting about 45 or so back on those. And then just been getting feedback on the season overall, things to, change for next year or things that were welcome for this year. And just happy that there was a season for everybody.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, Eagle Sticks,
Slow time here as well. Registration open for the spring.
right?
So they're just starting to move forward on that. But fall's all wrapped up, so
Great,
slow time there.
awesome. And then baseball. Tom, anything to tell us about baseball?
Yeah, so the fall season's all wrapped up.
Yep.
There's some teams that are doing winter training over at Windward Academy, and a couple travel teams might be sneaking on some fields. That's really it.
Yep. I see they were calling out for their select teams to play, or tryouts for select teams going on.
Yeah. Yep.
Do for the fall sports that finished, do we do a survey here at the end of the year of them?
Yes,
From the city to the participants?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. They are out now, and we're still gathering results. Thomas sent out surveys, and we got a lot of bounce backs and server rejections. So we're working with IT to see if we can find a way to hit these families in other ways. We've tried some other things that seem to be working better, but I'm not entirely certain everybody's getting a survey, which they typically don't. But it's not as good as normal.
Right.
So we're working on trying to get that fixed.
Gotcha.
But yes, they are all out.
Everybody's-
And we have received responses. It's just
Oh, good.
some program responses better than other.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Next item on the agenda is unfinished business. Let's begin with the all-day rental rates.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'll give you guys a brief summary of what we had spoken about last month. We had a tournament come through that kind of raised this question. They rented turf fields for many, many hours over a weekend, and they asked, "Hey, well, we're renting the field all day. Can we get a rate for it?" And in the ordinance, we don't have any such rate. So my idea was, well, let's float it, to the board here and get some feedback. Last month, you guys had asked us to research what other municipalities do, and it varies tremendously. Some don't. I spoke with Alpharetta today, as a matter of fact, and they do not have an all-day rate, but they do have the ability to reduce the rate for schools and nonprofits, and they also extend that rate to tournaments if they have lots of hours.
Right.
And so, it varies all around the board, and it's to me, it's what do we want to do at this point? Because I don't know if there's any right or wrong answer. So, I'd like to throw it to you guys. And
So what was
To the board here.
I wasn't here
Excuse
last
me.
month. What was the initiating event for, what kind of sport wanted
it
all-day
was
field?
it was Rush Union, the soccer. It was a soccer tournament, and they are a program partner of ours as well.
Right.
But they did it for a youth soccer tournament, so we rented it to them.
Gotcha.
And an option is also just keep things the way they are.
Right. It would seem, yeah. I wasn't, you guys, I'm certainly had some discussion last month, those of you who were here, I wasn't part of that. It seems like if there's capacity, it certainly makes sense to come up with an all-day rate. It's a rare field in this town that has capacity for an all-day rental. But given the established rates that exist, you would think that we could come up with some kind of all-day rate, particularly for a partner, different than somebody wants to come in from the outside. And maybe that's the line in the sand. Somebody comes in, finds an open space in a piece of field in our town and wants to host a tournament to make themselves some money. Well, then they can own the whole field. But if they're a program partner and they want to do something, then maybe we have some kind of different arrangement for them. Because I know going way back, my days at Hopewell, we had tournaments and there was no fees at all. It was just downtime in the calendar and we paid nothing for it.
Yes, and I don't know if I'd necessarily sway away from that if Hopewell Baseball wanted to run a tournament, or, North Georgia Rec wanted to run a tournament that was strictly for that program, to benefit that program, I probably wouldn't rent
Right.
the field. But because it was a program partner using it for their other age groups that we don't offer, we needed to rent it.
So there's an opportunity to rent, is really what you're describing, right? So somebody wants to take advantage of the field space we have that may not be a partner. That's the most likely scenario we're trying to protect,
Yes.
right? So we can either leave
Yes.
them with their hourly rate or give them some discounted full-day rate. I don't see that this is
Correct.
going to happen
Yeah.
that often.
No, I mean, the fields are used, you're talking off-season, a few weekends,
Right.
in the fall, and a few weekends at the end of the spring, potentially.
So what was Alpharetta's response?
They were the ones that had the reduced rate that they could
Because
offer.
Alpharetta does a cheaper rate for, like, the high school program.
Yes,
At,
correct. Schools and nonprofits.
But is it based on a hourly rate?
It's
Or do
still
they-
an hourly rate, it's a reduced hourly rate.
It's half.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is
that's
it
where I was-
published anywhere? Is it a published rate? Like, in other words, if I went to Alpharetta,
I couldn't find it on their website. I had to make a phone call.
Yeah.
and the reason I ask is, do we just not want to maintain some level of flexibility, maybe not publish a daily rate, rather we maintain the flexibility depending on who the program provider is or isn't?
Do we publish our rate now?
Yeah.
Yes.
All of our field hourly rates are published.
Yeah. And Mr. Chairman, there is a daily rate for our baseball fields,
Yeah.
but not for the rectangular turf fields.
Right. Yeah. Different issue that perhaps we need to talk about. Yeah, I mean, so the question would be, to your point, Phil, if a request came in for a rectangle field for an all-day rental, and we wanted that flexibility, where would we want that decision to be made? Would we just want to?
Well, I think there's,
But-
I guess, a couple of questions, at least in my mind. Like, I think the easy answer is to say, hey, do an all-day rate that's similar to what baseball is, whether it be 10 hours you get 12 hours for the price of 10, or whatever the case is.
Yep.
And that's a simple, and I think that would be one that would be simple. I think the other side is that if we're changing the ordinance and we want to look at this, do we want to look and say, hey, the kids at Milton High School, the kids at Cambridge High School, they're taxpayers.
Right.
Those are booster programs that, do we want to give them a discounted rate? Specifically, most of the time, they're off by 5 o'clock anyways,
Right.
right?
Right.
Doing the, citizens of our community.
Yep.
That's, I guess the bigger question is, if you're going to do that discounted rate, and I would assume it would apply to the schools, apply to our program providers,
Right.
right? So that if wanted to do that, discounted rate.
The schools aren't giving us any discount on their fields. So, maybe because I'm guessing as we have existing published rates on existing facilities and fields, that we need to come up with a policy, because ultimately you don't want this left to one-offs. You want to net because ultimately this decision got to go to council for approve a rate.
It would be, yes. And to correct you, we do get a nonprofit rate on the schools.
Yeah.
On our rentals of schools. There is a rate that's more than we pay.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe it's a fact of just picking the right rate and taking it to council and saying, here's what we recommend. If it's 50% off for those people that are in the friends and family kind of category, partners and nonprofits and local schools, we're good with 50% off. Anybody who comes in off the street and finds out there's an open field and wants to host a event of some sort, well, that's they go the full rack rate. And maybe it just applies to people that are under our umbrella of the city and benefiting our residents directly. I think
Does that apply to the all-day rate for the baseball fields today?
Again, I think.
Do those
part of-
special considerations already apply for the all-day rate? I see where you're going, Scott. It's let's be consistent,
Yep. No, I agree.
right?
Totally
And take
agree.
the ambiguity out of it and prevent the one-offs, because that introduces risk.
Yep.
So,
No, and everybody should know. All the citizens should know. All the partners should know what the rate is, and so if they're planning some event, they got a cost that they got to cover.
I mean, would it just make sense to offer the schools and stuff kind of the same rate that we would get and just have it at, whatever our percentage is if we were to use those facilities, that's what they get if they come to use ours?
Well, so we can go through some fields, right? So if baseball ran a tournament today, they're probably paying
It's 175 for a day.
for the day,
Yeah,
per field.
correct. 25 an hour,
Yeah,
or it's at 175 for the day. That's for a resident.
right. But that's if a resident came in off the street. So
Yeah.
if Hopewell wanted to run a baseball tournament today and said, hey, I want to host a tournament, it's an empty weekend in the park, we're still at $25 an hour for them, or are we?
I haven't historically rented to our own program
Yeah,
providers.
so that's kind of my point. So maybe the real message is
If it benefits the program.
Right.
If it's not some coach out of Hopewell coming in to
running a
make some
tournament for
that's
his
different.
team.
That's a different story.
Correct.
Even though he's part of Hopewell, it's not a Hopewell tournament.
Yeah, it's not benefiting the league; it's benefiting
Exactly.
a team level. kind of
Exactly.
thing. So maybe the answer is then for partners and providers that we continue the path that's been set, and if there's open field space, have at it. If you come in off as a private request or a event that is going to benefit something other than a partner directly, then there's a rate for it. And then the question is, do you give them a discount or not? I'd be tempted to leave the rack rate alone and just extend the field rental on when it's available to partners and schools. I'd include schools in that. Just say, have at it. It seems like it's going to occur very rarely.
It already does occur pretty rarely.
Yeah, that's kind of my point. I mean, it's Cox Field hasn't filled up yet, so they're taking advantage of that opportunity. But a year from now, 2 years from now, programming is going to get in there. Tennis courts are going to get in there. It may not even be available. Maybe this whole issue of a full day rate is a moot point, except for somebody who comes in off the street and says, "I want to hold something." And then we just charge them the standard rate that's already been agreed upon. Council's already approved, we don't have to change a thing.
So recap that for me.
Yeah.
Where does that land?
We're staying where we are.
So I think if I heard it right, it comes back to right where we are at now, that program providers, and we would consider adding schools to the friends and family, that there's no fee for an all-day event.
But I guess you gotta
Provided
think
there's
about that, 'cause
capacity.
I know-
Provided it's available.
Provided it's available.
Yeah, because it starts with scheduling.
You're throwing schools and nonprofits in there, or.
Well, so nonprofits get into some interesting requests because you haven't had that one right yet.
But there's a significant, Cambridge High School, I know, is out at Bell.
Yep.
Almost every day from 3 to 5.
Right.
They're renting those fields during the spring for soccer. Somebody's out there.
So they're renting, where they're paying you for that?
So that's I think that Cambridge High School athletic department just pays, charges it back out of the booster club.
Yeah.
So it pays for that to have it 5 days a week and does whatever.
I'll go back to the consistency part. What do we do for baseball? Do we charge rental rates for those that request, whether they're a partner or not?
If they're a partner, we don't charge. If it's a program that's offered or a tournament offered through our program provider, we do not rent.
Yeah.
They reserve the space through us.
Yep.
Do we rent any baseball fields today?
Yes.
Yes.
Cricket. For cricket.
Correct. Okay, so the question on the table would be if you're willing to extend the friends and family rate, of which is almost nothing, to the schools, which would be a change. I don't know what that amounts to, what we make from that, or what we'd be foregoing if we decided to go down that path.
To allow the schools to utilize the fields at no charge?
Yeah.
It's a pretty substantial rental.
Yeah, I was going to say, just from a overall standpoint, if you're saying that they're there from 3 to 5 pretty much every day, is it pretty common occurrence that, a high school or somebody is renting that field, say, 75% of the year, or?
I don't know.
Yeah.
You guys would know better. I don't know how much people are out there in the fall, just because there's no football, right?
Right.
The issue in Georgia with soccer in the spring,
Right.
across at all schools, right? You got boys and girls lacrosse, boys and girls soccer, and then track and field, who typically are on the outside of that field, which limits sometimes the field space there, right? So you have 5 where in the fall you have football, right? Softball's on its own field, cross
Right.
country. Those are the only people utilizing a rectangle field is football really in the fall.
So the question, the item comes up as all-day rentals, so 2 hours, 5 days a week is not all day. It's just a hourly rental of existing field capacity. The difference is if you wanted to take that field and own it for a day, most likely a weekend.
Yeah, so we've gone off the path of
We've expanded this.
The discussion is expanded from the all-day
Yeah.
field.
So,
or
I mean,
all-day
if the issue is just clearly on an all-day rental rate, then, my gut tells me that if you come in off as an outside interest to the city of Milton to take a city asset, a park space, and use it, a field of some sort, and tie it up for a day, well, then you're going to pay for it. If you're a program partner, football, lacrosse, and you're going to host a tournament, Mary Lacksmiths, they don't get charged for that. Hopewell, if they wanted to run a 10-year-old tournament for Izzy Dean or for the benefit of the league, or heck, when I was there, we participated in some big citywide tournament where we just threw fields in and hosted the 9-year-olds at Hopewell. 10-year-olds played at Wills, and it was all a fundraiser going somewhere bigger than our programs. Then we just, no charge for those fields. You're all contributing. Every city, every park was contributing. The question, I think, as you guys have raised it or was raised here as unfinished business, is really if somebody wants to come in and tie up a field for a day, what do we charge them? And to me, it sounds like the current policy is if you're a partner, you're probably not paying. If you're not a partner, then you probably should pay something for it. It seems kind of cut and dried to me. Nothing's changed, but that's just my gut reaction to it.
Not that it would matter if that's the side we're going to go for consistency. Do we change it baseball back away from a all-day rental
Just pull it.
and pull the all-day rental?
I don't know if in my
again I completely. But if that's the kind of the thought, and again I know this is doesn't happen often, but if that's the thought, we already have a all-day rental on baseball. From consistency, you would say, hey, if you're an outside organization, that rental or a full day rental there either.
I don't know in my 5+ years here I've ever rented a baseball field all day.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about a baseball tournament, and we don't rent fields to a competing program.
Right.
So
I feel like we're trying to solve for a
it's
problem
possible.
that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
I was just going to say, I feel like we're solving for a problem that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to oversimplify because I think everyone's got valid points, but if we just establish an all-day rate and just leave it, if a program provider comes and asks for an all-day access to the field, you're likely just going to give it to him. But if someone comes out from off the street, well, there it is. It's an established rate.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's 175, whatever the rate is. There it is.
Hourly rate for each field.
That's what I said. Let's maybe not overcomplicate. Just develop a daily rate.
Yeah.
Publish it. It is what it is. And you ultimately will make the call based on whether or not they're a program provider or
The request that came in, right?
based on the request that came in.
So are we talking about having an all-day rate for turf or no?
Be consistent with baseball.
So
Have an
yes.
all-day rate.
Okay.
Manage it the same way you have been baseball.
Okay. Just calculate it out. I mean, it's 7 hours of rental time
Yeah.
for
Whatever
all
it
day
is, yeah.
on baseball.
Seems like a
7 hours times 75. Right.
seems like a reasonable approach to me. I agree. Could make it simple.
I mean, since there's only so many rectangle fields and turf right now, I mean, yeah, I would say just keep the rate and multiply it out.
Okay.
That's the hardest discussion I've had all day.
You're welcome.
So do we have,
Now you know why I was unfinished, Scott?
yeah, just needed,
So is the motion to just keep it the same?
keep it the same, right? Do we need a motion
No, we-
for? We're just
We
leaving
need a
the
motion
policy
to,
that's in place.
put in place,
Yeah.
to put in place an all-day
To
rental.
recommend an all-day rental rate at, 7 hours. of
7
rental
hours
time
times
and-
whatever the going rate for that
Yeah, and then
particular
we'll,
field is.
and then we'll do the work on our end to get the ordinance change.
I was going to say, is
Put
that
it in
really
front of council.
require it? Because we're not doing, I mean, it's, you can say it's an all-day rate, but it's just, how many hours do you want it? Do you want it for the full 7 or do you want it for 5? I mean, if
Well, but
they're
I
just
think
going to pay
that's-
that hourly rate
I
times.
think that's the point of
They get
all
it for
day
12,
because
right?
it
You
gets
get it for-
different. It gets different than the 2-hour regular off rate. That's why it's focused on the all day aspect of it.
Well, I guess the
Let me-
question, not to make it even more complicated, but when we turn on the lights, would rentals go up?
Yeah, you still pay for the lights.
You pay for the lights
Yeah.
in addition, okay.
Yeah, and here's another thought, and not to overcomplicate this, I'm sure I will, but let's say someone rents it all day, but they only need the field till 6 o'clock. Do we block the field out from 6 to 10 anyway?
Well, if they're
Or-
paying for the all-day rate, or they say, or we establish whatever the time's going to be, and they say, okay, and they pay that thing, they can have the field to that time, I guess, right? Or,
What I'm saying is, do we block off the field, leave it empty? Someone comes to me and says, well, can I have the field at 7? And I say, no, someone rented it all day, but I know they're going to be done at 6. They show up at 7 o'clock with the lights off, and it's like, hey, you said the field was booked up.
yeah,
Like,
I
do we
mean,
need to clarify in there that you still tell us when you're going to be done, or do we just say,
You overcomplicated it.
I know?
No, but I would,
But that issue pops up in baseball fields today, has popped up in baseball fields forever. The issue that, we've reserved space and sometimes all the cake isn't eaten and there's some pieces left. You can manage it to a point. It's difficult to overmanage it,
I would say you would open it up, but I don't know that there has to be, right? I mean,
But I mean, I see.
because there's somebody who rents fields all the time. If I said, if I'm saying, hey, I'll be done at 6 o'clock, but the all-day rate saves me $100 or $150.
Sure.
It
Like,
still would.
Hey, I'm still saving money. That's all I care about.
Right.
You can do whatever you want. I'm off at 6. I really don't,
But you could see a situation, somebody rents it, says they're going to be done at 6, and their event runs over, and the next guy shows up at 6:45, and he's ready to get on the field, and he thinks it's available to him, and the all-day renter is still on it, and says, well, I still have and so,
For something like that, we still build in a buffer currently.
Yeah,
Anyways, if someone's running a tournament and says they're going to be done at 6,
yeah.
I'm not renting the field at 6.
Correct. So I leave that to you guys to figure out the scheduling part.
and I think you can be.
I will say
transparent
that
to who's
I
looking
can
for it.
understand the need for consistency across the board with baseball fields and rectangle. And I can see why this question arose after the tournament took place. Obviously, they want to get a better price. And as the person who takes in field rentals for the city, the price has not deterred anyone from renting the space.
Right.
And at the end of the day, longer rental times benefits the city.
Means, yeah.
So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. It hasn't
Yep.
scared anyone away. And a lot of times we'll work with them. So they'll think they need the field till 8, but they're gone at 6:30. We invoice them till 6:30. We're not,
Yeah. That makes sense. So the item here is to set a daily rate for each field that would go into an ordinance and.
If you choose, yes.
But if you're going to manage it off of a full daily rate anyway, then we just got an hourly rate and somebody comes in and they're making a full day request and we've gone full circle and nothing's changed.
I think the more we go about this, I think we just, for how often it happens, I don't know that it's worth the work for them.
Yeah.
Like, we just keep it the way it is, and for the one rental, we get one request every,
Yep.
5 years. Sorry, it's a
Year?
daily, yeah,
Per year.
hourly rate times 10 or 12 or whatever it is, and there it is.
Yep.
Is that how baseball is? It's literally the hourly rate times 7?
Well, yeah, it's $25 an hour or $175 for the full day. So if you calculate it out.
I think you leave it alone. We don't worry about having a full rate. We got enough prices and already published and.
I feel like we put this much effort into it. We should do something.
You guys could have done this last month without me.
We got through it a lot quicker when it was me up there, just by
I know you did.
FYI.
Thank you.
Meeting was
But you
wrapped
didn't come
up.
to a decision.
No,
that's the problem. Here we are.
We brought up a good point earlier about the schools and potentially other groups that maybe we could
Now
provide a
that-
discount for. Do we want to maybe put that on the agenda next month and talk about it, or is there do we feel comfortable just talking about it now? I mean,
if it hasn't deterred them from using it, I think that they're
Yeah, I mean, it has.
complaints about it or anything like that. I mean, if it's
Let's not solve for a problem that doesn't exist.
if they're comfortable with it and they haven't presented anything to us, is there a need to?
The only thing might be interesting, again, to have data to make decisions would be to look at what some history is of those kind of rentals, so we'd know what we're giving away, what discount we're taking from the city, be friends with other partners that are not program providers. That'd be the only reason to look at it. So if you want to come back with,
okay.
some numbers for next month, just to see how big it is, and we can get a sense of what we're making a decision on or not making a decision on, maybe that's what we do for that friends and family kind of theme. But otherwise, I think we just leave the hourly rate alone and you guys manage it as you have been doing. Any other discussion for that item A? You need us to vote? Sounds like we're going back to
And
status
if we're
quo.
not making any changes, I
Yeah.
don't believe so.
Okay, good. All right. Next item, Cox Road field layout.
Okay. We also talked a little bit about this last month. Staff had the idea of taking these two fields at Cox Road and doing a little twist on a multi-purpose field and really making it multi-sport as well, and shape. I will say this now, the layout here that is in front of you is not what I really envision them looking like. I'm sure we'll have a rectangle painted or sewn in as well. But the idea was to, increase the versatility of these fields, give us more flexibility. Prior to COVID, we were extremely low on baseball diamond fields, and giving us more flexibility on these rectangles will ultimately help all of our programs one way or another. Now, like I stated last month as well, that's all fine and good, but we're not really gaining fields at the same time. We're just gaining more flexibility. So if this field gets used, if one of these fields one night gets used for baseball, we're losing a lacrosse field that night, or football. But I think the flexibility still opens up a lot more possibilities, and it'll allow for more kids to be on these fields. And we're looking for thoughts on this portion of it, and then we've got. We'll talk about the small field after, or do we want to just go over the small field now as well?
No, we'll come back. Let's talk about this layout.
Okay.
When I saw it, I liked it. I mean, I think it's a fantastic way to stretch a piece of property that we didn't even think about a year ago as being a baseball field, and we certainly know that we're short of baseball fields.
So, like right now, would this include, if we did it to set up for a baseball field, like fencing on two of the sides or the whole thing?
Yep.
And then
There'd be backstops, dugouts.
And then would we put stands in for fans, kind of like we have at Hopewell, or at Bell you have for the rectangular fields you have.
We could probably put some stands in, and then you can
I
still
just
put
didn't know for
stands on the sides of the
Yeah.
rectangular fields as well for spectating.
Now, I guess the question really, how is parking? I mean, we did something for lacrosse last spring there, and we used the small turf field, but I know that parking lot's really tiny. Is how, like, capacity-wise, they were actually running either games or something that became there. Is that going to become a potential issue?
I don't believe so, because we've got an agreement with the school next door for overflow parking. Typically, when we have our activities, their school's not in session anyway, so that parking lot's empty. They use our field for their PE, and we use their parking lot for parking. We haven't experienced, and we've had these fields running full time. That same tournament from Rush Union, those fields were packed with people, and I never got a complaint about parking. It doesn't mean it wasn't a problem, but typically something gets to me if there's a big issue.
Yeah.
But and as we said I said at the last meeting, even if they are turfed and put in and no bleachers and they're just additional practice space right now, it would be a huge benefit to all the programs.
All the
right?
programs, I agree.
And you know, we can, you know, we don't need perfect to get in the way of progress.
Right.
Like if we can turf them and get things there. My, you know, only question, I guess, on both of them having the baseball is that if we thought you're putting soccer, lacrosse, and football lines on there, does this
That
become?
was going to be my question.
Does this become really a very confusing field where one of them has baseball and soccer lines and it's a little less, and the other one has football and lacrosse? That's my only question. Is that
Bill have that?
yeah? So Bell has
Got all those lines
you know,
on
because
the
like with lacrosse and with some of them you can spray paint lines down.
And that's what I would envision. A lot of the paint would be chalk paint that we put down and just keep up. Like right now, Bell Park's Field 1 is a kaleidoscope with adult soccer, lacrosse, football, baseball lines are on there too. It's everyone still plays, you know, and the beautiful part is, you know, the soccer lines, they fade away in a month. So if you don't keep them up, they fade away. It's chalk. So it's just, it would be more upkeep on the maintenance side and the city side things. But the lines that would be used very often, we'd put in there, the baseball lines, rectangular lines for lacrosse, I would assume. It would stay and sewn in, and then everything else we would just use chalk paint and keep it up.
We'd use different colors, some white and some,
Yeah,
so that you can.
most fields are.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
whether it be
white, red, blue.
Red lines or lacrosse
Orange,
lines, white
blue.
lines or whatever,
Yeah.
yellow, blue, whatever
Got
the
it.
case.
No, I think it's a fantastic solution, quite frankly. When I saw it, I was really impressed. So, all right. I think it's a great idea. If you need a motion from us to say yes to adding multi-purpose to multi-purpose fields, then by all means, I think we should do it. Unless somebody's got another objection. Okay, so then I'll entertain a motion to approve the Cox Road field layout to include baseball.
I'll make a motion to approve the Coxfield layout to include baseball.
Motion by Phil.
Hold on, can we include turfing it as
Yeah, I
well
was gonna say
in that
turf.
motion?
Oh, and turfing. Yeah, they go kind of.
To turf it and include
Yes,
baseball.
turf and include. Correct. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Turf's the
motion.
view, yeah.
Okay, motion by Phil, second by Jason. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I think that's a great improvement for that piece of property. Awesome. My assumption is that there is, Tom, money for turfing. That we didn't really talk about that.
That was my next question, is that,
Is there money for turfing? Or is this on a long-range wish list kind of?
I'm not entirely sure at this moment.
Okay, fair enough.
I was going to say, do we know how we did on savings this year?
Yeah, it's a good.
Compared to prior years?
It's a good plan. We got a lot of plans in this city.
Yeah.
It's a good plan.
Okay, that brings me to part two
Part
of
two,
the
yep.
Cox Road. The way that this field is currently being utilized, there aren't many of our programs that are using the smaller field there. It was designed to be an academy soccer field. It's perfect for that. And it's good for practice for that. But it doesn't seem that it's a good size field for teams older than 8 or 9 years old to practice on that field. It doesn't get utilized all that often. And I foresee that if we were to turf the bottom two fields, it would become even less desirable. And we know that we have a need for more tennis courts. This layout, I did it myself, but it is within a foot of accuracy of this tennis court being laid on that field. Mm-hmm. It's the perfect size for 3 courts. So I wanted to throw the idea out there of, you know, giving us more capacity for essentially tennis teams to be able to use, because you can't use just 2 courts and run a tennis team effectively. I ran this through our tennis provider, and I've asked him, what if we found 2 courts somewhere, could you run a tennis team? And he said he really needs 3 to be able to do it. So when I saw this, I hate to rip up a perfectly fine artificial turf field, but with the current utilization, I think the public uses it more than our programs and the school next door, more than our actual programming. So I thought, well, if we can get tennis courts in there, our program would use it.
Right.
So just an idea. If I'm off base anywhere, please, if this is a bad idea.
I just have a question more than anything. If we're going to invest the time and resources into 3 more courts, are they better served here or at the Milton Country Club where we already have courts?
That's a good question. Our master plan at the country club calls for 2 more. We would get an extra court out of this, and it would give us tennis programming at the other side of the city. But at the same time, having all the courts at one facility, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that question.
Yeah.
So
It's not that I'm opposed to it, but I'm just saying if you're going to do it, where does it belong? Is here the right spot?
Right.
Right.
how many courts do we have at Milton? Is it
4.
There's 4 already. So if we added 2 more, you'd have 6.
What's Terry's input on this idea?
I have not shared this idea with Terry yet.
Because with 6,
That would be interesting.
from your conversation, he said, he really
Doesn't
needs
matter.
3 for a team. So if there were 6 courts in one location, he theoretically could have 2 teams going.
Yes.
Okay.
His capacity would grow by more than 50%.
Sure.
Adding 50% more courts, he would get 75% more
Yeah.
Right.
utilization.
My gut tells me that before we make any suggestion, I'd want to know what he thinks of this idea of 3 courts removed from his current
And if we
facility. And I'd rather, before we made an idea for him, I'd rather have the partner here telling us this is a silly idea, it's too far from my existing program, or I'll take 3 courts wherever you can give them to me, and he's all in, then it's the easier decision than.
So, and the other thing I would throw out there is that if we are going to turf those fields and utilize them, they're going to be used for games. You could see this, a baseball team, there's no place to warm up, throw the ball before a game, or a lacrosse, right? So you have the next game, that field being utilized for that. I would also say that you could, because there's no place to warm up anywhere, right? So if you got 2 baseball games going on a Saturday morning and you got 4 more teams coming in next.
Just do
You'd have the outfield. You'd have the other side of the turf field.
True, okay,
outside.
so you got there.
And you just do a little better job scheduling to create
Yeah,
not
so.
back-to-back games, so you've got a little bit of.
But that's the other question, is that if you are
Right.
going to move baseball, if there's going to be baseball there 2 nights a week or something, whatever the case is on that turf, would they utilize a field up there?
Right.
To I guess, could you use, with it a turf field and more people there, would it get more to utilization,
with
right? Because you could actually put more people there, you could do some other.
You've got
I was going to say with
You got in the outfield over 200 by 140. You got plenty of space to go out and throw the ball around and do calisthenics and warm your team up. You're not in a cage, but
Okay. So,
You've
but
got-
and a lacrosse certainly, or a football, you would go.
that was kind of the point I was going to say, just from, depending on what tennis, how they feel on having the facility there. But instead of having to tear up, like you said, a perfectly good turf field, if we're going to put baseball fields over here, I know Hopewell does, they have their, whatever they call the mini hitters, so the younger groups, and they do it on the big field. But this size field is really, they're not throwing far, they're not hitting, they're learning basic skills. But to go along with these other 2, you put a cage or 2 maybe in there. You just have to put the cage part in, and you already have the turf down. From a cost perspective, it might be a little bit easier, and then you get facilities for warming up, or to be able to, have more events here to use those for weekends instead of. But I know we have a bunch over at Bell for that. But I know that program has grown, and one has always said, "You give me more fields, I'll fill them with players." So,
Yep.
And if they were going to run games or something on the weekends here.
So let's do 2 things then. For the the small field, the small turf field. Let's table this till next month. Let's go get Terry's input on tennis courts, and let's go talk to Juan about would he really use it for a warm-up facility, or could he go to the outfield, and would he insist, and would this become a regular field for games? Is it a practice field? How could he use 2 more fields?
I was just saying, from a younger perspective, I think it'd be
Then we
great.
can make a decision balancing the offsetting needs of tennis and baseball and figure out.
Well, and I think you'd see more utilization with those fields turfed. I think more people will utilize.
Yeah, well, we know
right?
turf
I mean,
fields-
you
turf
know,
fields
just
brings out
football,
everybody.
lacrosse, or trying to get over to Bell because you have consistency.
Yeah.
That you know you're not going to be rained out. You're going to
Right.
be there, right? If those are turfed, if I go back to when I was in Forsyth County, kind of parks become one side, right? Like I could see Milton wanting to use that, Milton districted high school kids wanting to use that park all the time once it's turfed because it's closer to their home than Bell is, right? And the Cambridge side would prefer to be at Bell as
course.
opposed to drive over
Sure,
there.
sure.
And so I'm sure that,
Could get Eastie Westie.
there's certainly you could use that for lacrosse for little guys,
Yeah.
right? If we were
Yeah.
over there. 100%.
So let's get some input for that matter.
Yeah,
Then let's go to
that's-
all 3 of them before next month and talk to lacrosse, baseball, and tennis and say, there's a field in the middle that
Yeah.
could go
be-
one way or another. Tell us how you see yourself using it if it was yours in its current configuration versus if we made a change. And then we can, one of the things we don't do well enough in this board, and should have thought about it last week when I saw this coming, was we probably could have reached out to them, made sure they came and had some discussion with them now rather than putting it off a month. Shame on me for not
I
fixing
agree.
that. So
Shame on me as well.
we'll table this item, or I'll make a motion to table this item, and then we'll go talk to partners and come back next month with a small field discussion. I think that'd be a really good opportunity.
Yeah,
And
I think
and whether
the
we
first
carry
place-
those conversations off with staff during the month, or whether they want to come to our formal meeting and do it here, we can do both, or either.
I think the first one was with tennis, right?
Yeah.
If he's not interested or is
It
not
makes it easy.
ideal and says, that makes it a lot easier.
Yep.
Right? But if he has interest, and then I guess it becomes, to your point, Phil, of the cost benefit, right?
Yep.
Is there a better, I would assume it would, I don't know that. I was gonna say, I assume it would be.
Any
cheaper
changes,
For where the other ones are,
Yeah.
but I don't know if that's true either.
each change option, each plan, A, B, and C, has different costs.
Correct.
Layouts for it that may come into the decision-making about what gets prioritized. We might have to go out and get a few estimates, so we'll hold that discussion. Do we need a motion to table that, Tom? For the small fields? Should we?
Let's do that.
Okay.
make a
Motion to
motion.
table the small turf field to next month?
I'll make a motion to table.
Motion by Jason,
Second?
second by Sean Michael. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next item, naming of the Cox Road complex.
This is a pretty wild one here. So, at my previous job, City of Alpharetta, I ran their soccer program, youth soccer programming, and the gentleman who is the president of the travel club happened to be one of the guys that was part of building those fields there.
Imagine that.
So I had lunch with him this week, and he brought a 50-page photo book of the whole process of the construction and everything for what was then called George W. Baker Soccer Complex. George Baker was a gentleman who owned a company named Data Graphic, and he had a semi-professional amateur soccer team that played down in Buckhead, and he lived up in Hickory Flat in Cherokee County. Got sick and tired of driving back and forth, bought this land, and developed soccer fields for his team. And that's the reason why there's the locker rooms and showers and referee locker rooms in the basement of the first building. He thought maybe he'd get a semi-pro team or a professional team out of this complex at some point. Doug Yearwood, my friend, he was an employee at the company, and Mr. Baker had him and one other gentleman run the whole project and put it all together. So to make a long story short, the only history that I've really found was this gentleman, and this gentleman is actually buried in the cemetery right next door. I haven't seen it myself, but I was told it's like one of the first headstones right next to the fields.
Wants to oversee his project.
Yeah.
Right? Wants to.
Still got an eyeball on it.
So, this was an idea, Baker Park maybe, I don't know, but there's not really much tied to the city of Milton with this guy's name besides the fact that he was, the guy that developed it and built it. And
Single-handedly built it.
yeah.
Not unlike
And,
anybody else's request in this town.
Right. So,
Time, money, and land. Take care of my own problem.
Just an idea. I don't know if you guys had thrown out, the board has thrown out any other ideas. But I really want to get a sign out front. And even if the name is Cox Road Athletic Complex, if that's what we want to call it. I mean, but if we want to name it some sort of park,
We could,
I'd like to be able to have this board recommend a name to council, or a few names that they can choose from.
what about after our former colleague?
Which one?
Coach? I mean, we can come up with a couple names maybe and discuss it next week or next month, hopefully when we have more of a panel.
So it's got a very thin history.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Last month I was tasked to see if I could find any history.
And you
so
did.
This is what I found.
Thanks. That's awesome. It's a
And he
great,
was from Hickory Flat, right?
it's a great
Yes,
story.
yes. Across the Cherokee line.
It really, yeah. So again, it goes, pre-Milton. It's a artifact. Doesn't reflect Milton. I'm thinking about this meeting today. I was thinking of could you get community engagement to do some sort of broader community kind of thing. It's easy to call it the Cox Road Athletic Complex, or that's simple. That's low-hanging fruit from a naming perspective. If it's not going to get used in a big bunch of soccer, rest in peace, Mr. Baker, but I'm not sure that, there's not a soccer heritage to the park that makes it soccer. It doesn't look like it's going to be a, 80% soccer field in this town. So it's going to get used for a lot of things. Is it close enough to City Hall to put the name Milton in it and call it, something Milton? I don't know. I'm wide open.
Milton Auxiliary Fields.
Huh?
Milton Auxiliary Fields.
I mean, the simplest one to me is to get the Cox Road piece into it somehow and not belabor the point. If you wanted to get the community involved, you could have a poll and see what other things came out of it, and you'd get some input other than the four of us.
I'm just wondering if there's somebody from the city of Milton that recognized. Right?
Yeah.
I would say that I think we should try to figure out some name. Nothing against Cox Road Athletic Complex, but if we have an opportunity that we could name it to something, we should try to put an honor on someone, that has served the city of Milton, served, where you go here, how deep do you go? Or,
So in my hometown in upstate New York, my father has a field named after him, and he's not dead yet. And I told him,
Is this an upstate New York
and I
thing for
told
you
him that they
guys?
name fields after dead people. And today he's in the nursing home and he's got dementia. And he doesn't remember it all. But I bring that up because it would be an interesting. You're talking about memorializing somebody. I mean, this could be the Jim Craig field.
Well, that's where I was.
That's
also
where my
going.
head was.
Yes,
if that's where you were headed.
it
That's
was going,
I picked right
is
up
that,
on it.
And again, it wouldn't have to be somebody, whether they be instrumental in starting the city of Milton. He was instrumental in starting athletics here, right?
I mean, it could be the
Craig Field is very
Craig
close to
Athletic
Coxfield.
Complex or
Yeah.
something. It could be. could be a lot of fun things to spin off that, but that might be a fitting.
But that, I think that it would be better to do it, whether it be for Jim or for somebody who started the city, somebody who, mental, somewhere, is a better place than just Cox Road.
Do you have a timeline on when you want the sign? No?
No timeline.
Then, is it possible to put out a poll to the citizens to recommend, or and we can kind of weigh those options, or kind of like what we do with the Hall of Fame?
Certainly a possibility.
Yeah,
We have a very robust communications department, so
Yeah,
they could,
we could
certainly put something together.
It would be fun to involve the community. We might get a surprise that
Correct,
I'm
yeah,
finding-
I guess if we're just saying, hey, they're looking to rename that, suggestions, and, right, as opposed to putting out.
On the Facebook page or whatever.
And,
Put it and
Yeah, I think that would give us a few more data points to ponder over.
I think in the spirit of being inclusive, this is an easy one, right? Because there's no really good ideas coming out of this meeting, right? So why not open it up to the community?
There's a few, and maybe the part of that survey is to reflect the work you put in. Say, hey, it's an old field, it's been around in Alpharetta. It was a soccer complex once. It's turning into a true multi-purpose facility. That's our vision for it. So have at it. Take some shots on goal and ask the citizens to see what they say. We've got a pretty active citizenry, and it would be a nice opportunity to see what they might surprise us with.
And then at least it
And
gives
for the
us a
record-
list to come back with and say, hey, you know what, this one really makes sense for the city.
yeah, I don't think Bakerfield is awful. I mean, the guy did buy the land and developed it into what is now becoming fields. I don't think that is an awful option.
Nope.
I think there may be better options that, I would prefer Bakerfield over Cox Road.
Yeah.
Athletics.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with that. And you did do your homework, so thank you for bringing that back. I think the history there is actually pretty cool. I don't
Yeah, I mean,
disagree with
that's-
that.
But I
would
think
actually
if there's
be okay
something
with
there
it. Yeah.
that could tie back into the city of Milton
Sure.
specifically,
Sure. Yep.
that we're not coming up with, I think that would be a better one. But again, Bakerfield complex would be. And again, I think we may have some time based on, when it gets turfed, it could be a whole rebranding of it, right? You turf it, rename it, do the whole thing all
It'd
at
be like a
once.
new grand opening kind of thing, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so then
you know,
let's
now
do
like,
Very good idea.
Let's do that. Well, if you're all in agreement, let's turn community engagement into a survey and come back to us in 60 days with some community input on what we can do. That'd be got a motion for that?
I'll make a motion to get some community input for the renaming of the Cox Road.
Okay,
Athletic
motion by
Complex.
Jason,
Second?
second by Phil. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. Great idea. All right. Thomas, item D under unfinished business. I was surprised to see.
I had lunch with one of the managers at the city of Alpharetta a few months ago now, and the idea popped up about having an MOU regarding youth football. Our youth football program right now is, and this is recapping last month here, but they're having a tough time running two completely separate programs under the same name and being able to field teams appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
And
Surprise, surprise.
admittedly, I've banged their doors down to try to look. You need a Milton registration. You need an Alpharetta registration. And wherever someone signs up, that's the park they play at as their home park. And if they have away games, just like any other sport, it's fine. You can play your away games in North Park. And the idea got floated. Well, of all the sports, of all the athletics, this makes the most sense to do an MOU because it is the same program provider, and the way that this year shook out, it was just odd. We had 2 age groups of flag football at Bell Park, and there was 1 age group of flag football at North Park and all tackle football at North Park. So it just was odd and strange, and so we thought this would be an MOU that made sense for both cities. We bring a lot of the kids. The participants are Milton residents. They've got fields. We have a field to offer as well that is very satisfactory. And so I wanted to throw that idea out to you. And then I've added in Camp Joyful Souls and Camp Happy Hearts as well. They're very receptive to that idea as well, where the special needs summer camps, we don't have any competing age groups.
Right.
They graduate, for lack of a better term, from their camp to our camp. So, it will give our Milton residents that we don't have a summer camp to offer them at the younger ages.
Right.
They could go over to Alphareta's program and vice versa. So, I wanted to float the idea, get some recommendations from the board here as far as what your thoughts are. I did speak with Alphareta today, and they, staff anyway is very receptive to this idea, and they're going to put it to their rec commission for their recommendations as well next month. So this MOU might have legs. So just want to get your input as a board.
Mr. Chairman, we did discuss it last month. And if I'm recalling, we didn't find many issues, if any, with it. It seemed to make sense, but wanted to defer this month for those that weren't there last month to weigh in before we made the call. I think we only had 4 last month, so that was really why it got kicked to unfinished business.
Makes a lot of sense.
But I think most of us were okay with the recommendation.
It's really a nice thing to hear calmer heads prevail, and municipalities recognize that they want to serve citizens, regardless of where the lines are drawn between the municipalities. This is a perfect place for this discussion to get resurrected. I would be all in favor of it. Not mentioned in here, Tom. Maybe it falls. Maybe it's operating this way already. But the senior center and our residents' access to the senior center, is that still happening? Right. So maybe we throw that in there and codify it in some MOU that, because they were always a protected class in the old agreement, that there was a sharing of resources so our senior citizens could use their facilities. Maybe we
Their facility at North Park, our Milton residents currently use.
That's what I'm saying. Maybe you codify it in an MOU, and you got one more ornament to hang on this tree. And so you got football, you got special needs, and you got the elderly, and you have a new beginning of some mutual cooperation. I know in previous MOUs, this got sensitive. Alpharetta is structured differently than we are, so designated council people in Alpharetta represent and work with their parks department. So a council person was leading the charge and the negotiation of the MOU. Various council people, Jameson and Coons, have attempted it years prior on our side. I suspect this is the same kind of thing, right? It's going to go to staff for council to be the team to work out the details. Or do you think it's just a staff level craft and agreement? Because
it might be a staff level crafted agreement, and then both councils
bounce it back and forth.
Yeah,
I think this is a fantastic idea. I would run fast with this one in place by next football season.
Yeah, I mean, I think from the logistics standpoint of what I've heard from the football program, I mean, I think it makes sense. I think obviously old MOU, as long as it makes financial sense too. That I think we're
really going to come
benefits
down to
both.
terms to
no money would change hands in this MOU.
But I guess the question is, for the other programs, are they going to feel slighted?
So that's my own.
Have an MOU for 1 or 3 programs, say, but then you have all these other residents that have to go to Alpharetta for things, and
That is exactly where I 100%, like, I am for this. I think this makes sense, right? Like, it's just the way it's clunky. But does this open up softball and other programs saying, well, how come football, the whole king, we're in the South, it's football. Does this open up a can of worms across the board? People saying, how can you do this for that sport and not for my sport and only for this one sport? And just need to think that through.
My mind was going there, Jason, and I think actually that this is maybe the first step in a rebuilding of
100%.
Because otherwise you stand on the sidelines and you
Yep.
leave it alone,
And that-
make the program struggle. Special needs in the elderly are easy.
Yep.
Football's the first one, just because it's a numbers game, right? Two teams and one team of flag football isn't a program.
Exactly. And if that's, and that very well could be the
And
answer.
maybe that's
and
the beginning of a renewed spirit of cooperation between the cities. That you solve a problem finally, and then you start looking for what's next.
Yeah.
Will some people be slighted that this one didn't get
Sure,
included?
yeah.
Sure.
But,
Yeah. But I can't fix every problem.
Yeah.
Right out of
And
the gate.
it's our first foot in the door and we can move from there. Yeah.
And with these particular programs, both cities have something to offer.
Correct. Which is part of the issue in the original MOU was it was always, Alfred always felt lopsided that we were bringing people and offering nothing in return. And we have a field to put on the table in this discussion. So I think that there's a little something, realization there's something for everybody, bodies and abilities. So, yes, I would expect there'll be some blowback somewhere down the line and some programming. And I could hear softball, coming, but, I think it's an opportunity. Open the door and,
That was another, just to circle back to the Cox Road, I mean, could we use it for softball facilities?
Yes.
That can maybe open the door if we get that kind of developed and
Yeah, the question becomes,
Yeah.
is 2 feet enough for softball? To run a softball league, I don't know.
but if you're throwing two in the inventory that they got. And you're bringing
Oh,
in
I see, so
residents,
for the MOU, yes. I
Right,
gotcha.
so in a second, in
Yes,
version 2,
of the
you're,
MOU,
now
got
I'm
you.
offering you something.
Something,
I can give you a
gotcha.
relief on
Fields.
something.
I
I'm
thought
not
you were saying
competing.
that could we run I don't know that you
Yeah,
could
no.
run
No,
just
not
two
compete,
fields, but on
just
the MOU,
share.
yes.
additional fields that
Yep.
now.
No, I
don't
think
know
that's
how
I think
softball
that's
teams
the
are.
spirit of getting this snowball rolling, I think it's a great idea for you guys, staff, but, if you can work, I say this on live, if you can work this out at the staff level and keep the councils out of it and get, the pieces lined up, kudos to you. That's would be a feather in your cap. So I'd be all for advancing this discussion of football and special needs and elderly and finding a new agreement that solves a problem that we have. So if you're okay with that, then we should make a motion to direct staff to continue this discussion with Alpharetta for a possible MOU regarding football, Joyful Souls, Happy Hearts, and I would even throw in the senior center just to make sure that we include it so it gets written in rather than just a gentleman's agreement between cities. So if you guys like that idea, then I'd entertain that.
It's not really a gentleman's agreement between the cities. It's just the policy that Alpharetta has.
Yeah,
It's what they've always had.
right.
That center has always been welcome to anybody, regardless of your residency.
Yep. And similarly, we could open up the birdhouse for anything that's going on up there to their people if we were sharing.
They already do because they're Fulton County residents in Alpharetta.
Okay.
Because it's a Fulton County Senior Services.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Good. So if I'll entertain a motion to direct staff to continue the discussions of the MOU.
I will make a motion for staff to continue the discussions with Alpharetta on the MOU for.
Motion by Jason,
Second?
second by Sean Michael. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. That closes out unfinished business. New business item A, next year's meeting calendar and start time. Looks like the third Thursdays of the month to me. I'm all good with that.
Anything here, Tom, or do we just take?
Yeah, so this, Mr. Chairman, this is the third Thursday of every month.
Yep.
I didn't really hit any holidays once again.
Perfect.
Are we still wanting to keep these meetings at 6:30?
Works for me.
Yeah.
Breakfast club? First quarter, I mean, I feel like we're all still going to be home, no? All right.
We can go back to the alternating lunch meetings.
Yeah, let's worry about that next year. I'm okay with this 6:30 slot. We can leave it there.
I'll make a motion to approve the meetings.
Motion
calendar
by
for
Jason. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Phil. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Tom, I hate to be a broken record, but will you send out meeting notices?
Yes.
Thank you.
Perfect. Last item on the agenda, staff reports.
happen.
Trust me. Staff reports. Thomas, enlighten us.
Our first subject is our provider contracts. Last week we sent out 14 contracts to our programs, 13 returning programs, and our 14th will be the fitness program that spoke several meetings ago. So we've already received a handful back, and we're scheduling meetings, and hopefully early January, fingers crossed, we can get all 14 back. So
Awesome.
It's a process, but it's going right now, so that's good.
And props to Thomas. These program provider contracts historically are tough to get back. And additionally, we're also usually in the middle of basketball season with a lot more gyms and a lot more balancing. But Thomas is doing he's very diligent and is getting, we sent him out, yesterday or the day before? Yeah, and he's already got 2 in hand, and he's already got 3-4 meetings next week. So
Did we last year have a kickoff meeting with all the partners?
February.
I knew it was early in the year.
Yep.
We should be thinking about doing that again.
Yep.
Chance
It was
to
on. It was
talk
on.
about survey data and let the program partners meet each other, talk about what they're planning for the year or what kind of initiatives they're after. And
Yes, we take advantage of our meeting when we meet them to pick up the contract, and we go over their survey results for the year.
Yeah.
During that time,
In that-
while we
yep.
have their ear. So we've been doing that this week as well.
Great.
Okay, the next item is lightning detection at Bell Park and Cox Road. The lightning detection system at Bell, for those that use it, those of you guys that are out there, it's hit and miss. You can see lightning in the sky and hear thunder loud, and it doesn't do anything.
And then you can see it nowhere around, and it's perfectly sunny, and it goes off.
Because
Yep.
it's prediction.
Really?
That's right.
It's prediction. It's a prediction system, not a detection system. There's a subtle difference.
So
What's it predicting on?
It's predicting the likelihood of lightning. So on a perfectly sunny day, it can go off, and it's reading something in the atmosphere. I was there when it was installed.
yeah.
A perfectly sunny day, that horn will blow as loud as can be. It's happened to me at Forsyth County Parks, too.
Yes, it
over the
happens.
years.
Happened out of Georgia Tech running a camp. Pouring rain, thunder, lightning, coming down on us. That thing didn't go off.
Didn't go off.
And the next day, it was perfectly sunny, beautiful.
Yep.
And that thing,
But
you're there, you're clearing fields for that.
Tremendous confidence in the participants
Yes.
when you see that discordance.
Yes,
Weather Channel.
Pull it.
correct. But
I saw it you already had it on the council agenda, right?
Yep. Well, we purchased a lightning detection system for the pool last year, and it's amazing. It pulls data and from all sorts of weather stations around that also the news uses and everything, and it calculates lightning strikes within hundreds of feet where it is, and the way that the pool operated this summer, there were the only error we had was when the internet went out on our little hotspots that are out there that are feeding it the information, because we don't have internet in the building anymore because it's gutted out.
Right.
It was extremely accurate, and it would go off, and minutes later, predictively, there'd be a storm rolling through.
Yeah.
Almost every time. And so we have retrofitted, we're going to be retrofitting Bell Memorial Park's system with the Earth Network system that we have at the pool, hopefully to get some more consistency and keep the kids on the field when it's okay,
Right.
and get them off when it's not safe. And we are also going to put one out at Cox Road. So I'm scheduling a meeting in 2 weeks. We already have it scheduled to have a walkthrough on where they're going to go.
Great.
And I'm expecting by the start of the spring season, we're probably going to have them both installed.
Awesome.
So we won't have to go off of Cox Road, especially. We won't have to go off of. Did you hear that? Was that thunder? Nah, it probably wasn't thunder. You know, that's what all the coaches do, right?
Right.
That wasn't thunder.
Truck rolling by.
So that's item B.
I think my only statement there is that you will want that communicated out through our partners to their coaches, that those have been
What the
updated
new
and
rules are to operate under.
just, if you've been at Bell for 5 years and you know, like, it's not going to storm. Like, there's a Bell you kind of take the, well, I haven't seen it yet.
Yep.
Okay, now we got to go.
Yep.
That we may want our partners
Yep.
to communicate that out to coaches, that it is new and accurate.
Yeah, everybody. Yeah.
Will do. Certainly will do so. Item C, Thomas, do you want to?
Yeah. Our COVID-19 reporting for our winter program, just to date back to our fall, we did have 5 cases reported to us, all from NFL, I believe.
Baseball and an AFL.
Are there some from baseball as well? And then as far as winter goes, we've had 8 reported cases from basketball to this point. About half of them were positive tests of either players or family members. The rest were, I guess, close contact or, quarantining for a few days. But Halftime Sports has done a great job. They're being very informative, sharing all the information, all the cases, and they're following all the precautions, doing their best to reschedule the games they've had to cancel. So they're really staying on top of it. Anything to add, Tom?
That's it. Thank you.
I'm not surprised. I mean, we've seen the elementary schools, the middle schools go through their own little bump of late.
Yep.
I'm not surprised it's fallen down to our partner programming.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Item D, the roundabout at Hopewell and Thompson at the corner entrance of Bell Park has started. They started clearing on Monday or Tuesday. They should have gotten a lot of the clearing done today, and the trail runs through that corner right there. We had to close the trail for that clearing, and then they will, once the clearing's done, they'll reopen it for a period of time. And the contractor that's doing the roundabout will also, once the roundabout's in, they are going to redirect the trail
Right.
to cut through the woods there at some point during the construction process, they'll do that.
Yeah.
Oh, the trail inside the park.
Inside the park, yeah. It loops around and runs right along, right along
I remember
Hopewell.
one of the first maps. It'll be right on top of the roundabout when roundabout's done.
Yeah.
Good.
Just making you guys aware of that.
I appreciate that.
And I do have one more staff report that's not here on the list. We have a new program supervisor who is filling my old shoes. Thomas has accepted the program supervisor role, and we will be.
Congratulations.
And we will
Congrats,
be.
Thomas. Appreciate it.
It was well earned. He's doing a fantastic job. He's the perfect person for managing the programs.
Awesome.
And we will be putting out the job for his old position very shortly. I want to get that filled as soon as I can. So we're moving in the right direction now,
Awesome.
and to being a full staff.
Great.
That's awesome. Great. Congrats, Thomas.
Yes, congrats.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
And
Anything else?
that's all I have for staff reports, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Anything else, gentlemen? No?
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Jason,
Second?
second by Phil. All in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So moved. Thanks, everybody.